quick update on the 8 disruptive innovation themes that are found in our Global Innovation Fund, or ticker EDGE. Looking back at 2021, there was a global increase in electric vehicle adoption throughout the year. Bloomberg actually forecasts that about 10% of all global vehicle sales this year will be electric. That's more than 2 times what it was last year. And the big reason for this is there's a lot more commitments from both governments and automakers to electrify their fleets and to commit to zero emission targets. There are currently 18 national governments that have zero emission commitments and about 12 automakers that have commitments to electrify some amount of their fleet over the next decade. Looking at 2022, one key thing to watch will be the easing of the chip shortage, which has led to pent-up demand for electric vehicles since these automakers cannot produce enough electric vehicles to meet consumer demand. Another couple things to watch for 2022 will be building out more charging infrastructure for these EVs, and then also technology improvements for the capacity and the range of a lot of the batteries that go into electric vehicles. Both those things we think will increase the number of electric vehicles that are on the road next year. Now moving on to cybersecurity. So the number and the scale of cyber attacks has increased dramatically over the last year. It's affecting organizations of all sizes and across all industries. A lot of governments have actually started to intervene because a lot of these attacks have threatened their national security. In the US, as an example, Biden actually has made cybersecurity a huge priority. So in August, he actually hosted a cybersecurity summit where some of the largest CEOs across big tech and insurance got together. And the result of the meeting was billions of dollars committed to cybersecurity efforts. Looking at 2022, as organizations continue to shift to the cloud, this will only increase the number of vulnerabilities that cyber criminals could exploit. And this is going to create the need for a lot more cyber experts. Actually, a lot of Fortune 100 companies that have huge cybersecurity budgets don't actually have the people with the right skills in order to implement and deploy this technology. So looking forward next year, we believe there will be a lot more skills training in cybersecurity roles, which will lead to a lot of job growth in the industry. So now moving on to the eGaming sector. The eGaming sector did experience some performance challenges throughout the year. And the reason for that kind of comes from 2 key points. The first one is China's crackdown on the eGaming industry. So this crackdown has lasted almost an entire year now, and it's really centered around the concern that gaming is too addicting for minors. The second point is concern that as the economy reopens, individuals will spend less time playing video games. One thing that was a bit interesting that we noticed was as the economy did start to reopen, well, it's true that maybe console gaming declined slightly as people weren't spending as much time inside. The growth in mobile gaming actually more than made up for that. So those 2 reasons that led to some negative sentiment over the year make us think that it's actually a great entry point for this sector because it has been a little bit oversold over the year. Looking forward at 2022, the buzzword and the thing to watch will be the metaverse. Well, the metaverse is not only gaming. You're going to be able to do tons of different things in the metaverse. Gaming will certainly be a part of it. A lot of these video game creators, they were the first ones to really start creating these virtual worlds. And as they find ways through the metaverse to make the gaming experience more immersive and enhance the augmented reality and virtual reality aspect of it, the number of users on these platforms will only increase. The 4th theme I'm going to cover is the cloud computing industry. So while the shift to the cloud started in 2020, it has only continued to accelerate in 2021. And this is as many businesses have realized that this work from home environment that we've created is really here to stay. It's unlikely that any company are going to go back to 100% work from the office. It'll likely be more of a hybrid approach. Next year, we're likely to see more industries continuing to adopt the cloud that had previously been a little bit slower. A great example of this is the financial services industry, which has been a bit slower to transition all of their systems over to the cloud. 2022 will likely be another big year for cloud computing. It's actually one of the fastest growing sectors in tech right now, and that's evident from the performance of some of the largest cloud computing companies over the last year. A recent survey actually found that over 80% of executives say that cloud computing will be critically important to their business next year. And the most executives actually said that their largest investments next year will be shifting their businesses to the cloud. The cloud computing market is expected to grow from $700 billion in 2021 to about $1.3 trillion by 2025. The next theme I'm going to touch on is robotics and automation. So the pandemic spurred accelerated growth in robotics and automation. And the reason for this is because companies were able to increase their efficiency and their speed in their manufacturing process in order to meet demand. The pandemic also made it a lot harder to hire and retain employees. And the more robots that a company used meant the less human capital that was required. Companies in North America actually ordered a record number of robots throughout the first 9 months of the year. The value of these orders totaled about $1.5 billion, which is about a 37% increase since last year. Looking at 2022, one interesting element will be how companies are leveraging robotics to enhance the speed of their deliveries. So using drones as an example. In the pandemic, drones were used to deliver a lot of medical supplies from hospitals to labs a lot quicker than a vehicle could driving across town. So in 2022, it will be interesting to see what other industries start to leverage delivery drones in order to increase the speed at which they can deliver their goods to consumers. So now I'm going to touch a little bit on genomics. Genomics were instrumental in the creation of the vaccine and the boosters in order to help us prevent the spread of COVID-19. A lot of quantitative genomics are actually being used to track and monitor the spread of this virus. The Delta variant and the Omicron variant of this year are just another reminder that the pandemic is still not behind us, but genomics is instrumental in the fight against it. Looking forward at 2022 and several years beyond, one exciting thing will be how genomics and mRNA technology will actually reshape medicine and beyond just the fight against COVID-19. The success of the vaccine has actually encouraged a lot of the biggest pharma companies to work at developing both an HIV and a malaria vaccine. Genomics will also hopefully be used in other areas of medicine, like faster cancer detection as an example. And really it's going to be big data and DNA that will be at the center of this genomic revolution. The second last theme I'm going to touch on is FinTech. So the pandemic accelerated the growth in e-commerce and online payment systems, especially with the older demographic. Actually, 88% of Americans use FinTech on a regular basis, and that represents about a 52% growth from 2020 to 2021. The use of FinTech has really changed the norms for a lot of people. A great example of this is online banking. So if you're part of the older demographic that had to learn how to use online banking during the pandemic because you couldn't go into your bank branch, it's very unlikely that you're going to stop using online banking once the pandemic is over. Another thing we noticed in 2021 was this explosion for buy now, pay later companies. Square, as an example, acquired Afterpay for $29 billion this year. Looking forward at 2022, one interesting theme to watch will be this idea of FinTech as a service, or FaaS. And FaaS is basically a software that companies can integrate into their systems through APIs in order to deploy FinTech technologies that were created by specialists. And the reason for this is the growth in FinTech has actually created a bit of a divide between these nimble tech startups that can deploy new technology easily and more traditional industries that have more legacy systems. So FaaS companies are really working to bridge this gap. The final disruptive theme that I'm going to touch on is 5G. Looking back at 2021, 5G deployment continued to increase across the globe. Verizon actually nearly doubled their 5G deployment versus the past 2 years. Looking forward at next year, we'll likely see more industries and companies continue to leverage 5G in order to enhance their offerings. 5G is going to impact every single industry because it's basically changing the way that machines interact with each other. Some examples that we could see next year are more 5G enabled factories. 5G is also attracting more gamers to the cloud. And 5G is being used to power more immersive experiences in the metaverse through augmented and virtual reality. Overall, 2021 was a great year for disruptive innovation, and this video highlighted just a few growth drivers that we think will be important and what we're excited about for next year.